Okay, so we'll get started. We are certainly a few members short of quorum, but certainly in respect to your time and not holding you up, we'll get started. Also, in a similar vein, Rich had asked if we could kind of move some of the more council-related items, such as the subcommittee reports, down to the end. So, barring any issue with that, we'll kind of just rearrange that and move that down to the end.
And if I could, Jim, just to actually complicate it a little more, Mr. Sheffield has to leave pretty quick, so if there's anything.
Actually, I'm good until about 7:40 or so.
So I just want to make sure we fit anything in for him.
Scheduling.
We just, again, I want you guys to use them while they're here to the most effectiveness, so I don't want them to leave if you had more questions, so just, again.
Fair enough.
be
We'll
open.
move item 3 up to
Okay.
the top. That was a scheduled discussion, and then we'll move things around. Fair enough?
Thank you, thank you.
Just to point out that we are on tape. The microphone is there, so I would appreciate it if you would speak as if you're speaking to John over there. Be very clear, and it'll all get picked up.
Okay, check.
So, for the sake of a welcome, I think for the most part, everyone knows each other, but if we could
Let's just go around the room.
go around the room, I'd appreciate that.
John Longobardi, Metro North.
Rich Jankovic, Connecticut DOT.
John Kessich, Metro North.
Mike Schiffer, Metro North.
Tim Beagle, Secretary of Council.
John Hartwell, co-chair of the council.
Jim Gilday, also co-chair, Commuter from the Waterbury branch, as well as the main branch.
Jeff Marin, commuter from Stamford.
John Austin, my interest is high-speed rail.
See, me and John always put our service announcements out there. I always mention I'm the Waterbury branch commuter, and always mention high-speed rail.
I'm Denver.
And our guest.
Michael, would you like to introduce yourself?
Mike Mahoney, resident of Westport, and experience in financing the rail industry.
And so for the gentleman from Metro North, Michael was one of our commuters who had wanted to, and had asked to sit in on the operations discussion. So when we do re-engage that, and I did talk to Michael about the postponement. So when we do re-engage that, Michael was someone who expressed an interest to participate.
Michael, you're welcome to come up into a more comfortable, closer chair.
I think those are the student seats, these are the teacher seats.
Absent of your, other than your welcome, Michael, did you want to say anything from the public?
No.
Okay, so if we've all kind of agreed to move the agenda around, we do not have a quorum to vote on the April minutes, so we'll withhold that as well, pending other board members or council members' arrivals. So the item number 3 was the new schedule impacted issues. Was there anybody from the council who wanted to share their input, their thoughts, the schedule, had questions on the schedule?
Do you have copies to hand out tonight, somebody from Metro North?
Of the schedule?
Yeah.
Sue might have it when she comes, but
Got one or two kicking
it's
around.
available on the web.
Just want to get a copy if anybody wants it.
So if I could.
Absolutely, Jeff.
First off, I really appreciate the effort made by Metro North and DOT to look back over what's working on the schedule and what's not, and try to come up with a mechanism that allowed riders to have more faith in the numbers that they were given, and where it needed to be extended is extended, where it could be shortened, it was shortened. I think people are beginning to feel a bit better about it. There's still a number of issues surrounding how it's working out, still shaking out a little bit, even though it's been a period of time. I think there were a couple of issues that probably could have been done a bit better, and they all surround communication. I noticed you mentioned that they're available on the web. It's almost impossible when you use a handheld device to actually try to read that schedule on the web. And I know that the folks at the information booth at Grand Central were pretty frustrated, because up until the day before the new schedule went into effect, people kept coming and saying, I want a copy of the new schedule. I kept saying, we don't have one.
Yep.
They were like, but it's happening Monday, today's Friday, how do I know what time to get on my train?
Yeah.
So if you could try to print them a bit earlier, or allow folks to have access to them. I appreciate that you guys worked probably till the very last day to try and get that schedule to a place where you could have confidence in it, but just want to pass that along from a lot of commuters.
If you
Can I
want.
speak to that, the schedule?
Yeah.
I know I walked into I didn't hear the whole thing,
Yeah.
but we totally agree with you. It's our objective to get it out at least a week ahead of time, preferably closer to 2 weeks. But like you said, there was last minute work going up right to the very end. And as a matter of fact, for the New Haven line, we expedited a partial delivery so that we could at least get them out for Friday. I will say though that we did have schedules up on the web for about 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I believe it was up
Prior.
about 2 weeks prior to that, so the schedules were available that way. But it's definitely our objective to get them out.
With this schedule change, and Rich could maybe talk a little bit from the CDOT perspective, you know, there's a process by which CDOT needs to review and approve the schedule. And until they review and approve the schedule, that, you know, prohibits us from actually sending it to the printer to be printed. You know, as Sue mentioned, you know, we had it up on the web 2 weeks prior, you know, because that's something we can easily modify and take down if something changed. So I don't know, Rich, if you
Yeah,
want to.
no, absolutely. And I've obviously been around the schedule for a couple of years now with Gene, and they do a good job about in advance getting it to us and us reviewing it and getting comments to them and them getting it out the door in a timely manner. But as the schedule change was going through and a lot of things were going on with all these investigations, Commissioner Rediker had a lot of concerns on behalf of himself, the state, as well as the governor. So there was a lot of high-level discussions, and I think, John, back and forth of not even Commissioner Rediker, but also Deputy Commissioner with yourself.
Correct.
That really took away, to get it right, the time to give them to get it out. So I don't, you know, again, this schedule had a lot to do with a lot of effort by, but not only Metro North, but the CDOT and the state involvement. So that's just really
I
what
think you could
transpired
have
this summer.
turned that to an opportunity for yourselves to get that message out, that you were looking at what was posted on the web, listening to comments from commuters, working with Connecticut to fine tune it, and that's why it wasn't there.
Yeah.
Not, we hadn't bothered to do it. Because otherwise, in the absence of any of that information,
It's
all that a
isn't there.
rider knows is, it's not here. They don't know all the hard effort that's being put in on your part. So you lost an opportunity, either by using us to advocate on your part, we could tweet it out, we could get it out to our mailing list, we could do whatever, or even seat drops that say, we're still fine tuning it, we know it's getting close, you'll have it Friday for Monday, don't worry about it. As simple as that would have let people know that you were aware of their concerns, you were addressing them, and you were being responsible, rather than they were being ignored.
So for the record, I would just say that we have had 2 additional council members, and Ms. Fuchs and Terry Borgelson, which does take us up to the quorum amount.
And we also have Sue Doring here from Metro North, who's just arrived as well. So everyone who's not been here before should know that we're on tape, that the microphone is there. Would appreciate it if you would speak clearly, forcefully, so that it carries across.
And not swear, is that?
And not swear, that's right.
That much.
Rich, can I ask, did the governor in fact do the final approval on this schedule?
I can't comment on that because Jim Rediker works directly for the governor. I know Jim was heavily involved. I would assume that he was in touch with him, but I can't say the governor finally approved it or rejected it. That would be a question for Jim. I can follow up for you and check with Jim to see if the governor had a final approval of it, but obviously he was in touch with Jim, with the governor.
But the process does go to Commissioner Rediker, who does have to give his seal of approval before it goes out.
Yeah.
And for Terry and Mitch's benefit, we've kind of moved things around to accommodate the Metro North folks. So we actually are on item number 3 of the agenda, the new schedule impacting issues.
Do you have any more copies of the agenda?
There's some over here. So Sue, I also noticed that on the, for the new schedule for the Danbury line, that a couple of trains that used to originate in Stamford are now originating in Grand Central. So I guess, I'm thinking about the
I'm not sure what you
518,
said.
the 518.
Originated in Stanford are now originating in Grand Central.
Yeah,
Oh.
Yeah,
You're
they're
talking
In the
eastbound?
outbound direction.
Outbound?
yeah, outbound, yes. And so, I guess that eliminates the need for some Danbury passengers to take a train out of Grand Central and transfer. They'd be coming in on the train that arrives around 5:10, I suppose, in Stamford, and then transfer over the Danbury line, which would originate in Stamford. So now you're going directly out of Grand Central.
1844 now originates in Grand Central.
Single seat ride, I think you call it.
Yes.
So now they've added a single seat ride, is that what we're saying?
At least one. I'm
Yes.
trying to
Yes.
remember
And
what.
One inbound, one
1811
outbound.
in the morning as well. Right, it's 1811, I think, in the morning.
So the
Yeah,
one in the
first
morning, the first train out of Danbury in the morning is a through train, and then you maintain the, I guess about the 8 o'clock train out of, yeah, so that one remained as a through train as well.
Yeah, so we went back. 1811 was a through train, was taken out as a through train, and we put it back out, so. I don't think there are any modifications to the other one, other than on B.
Yeah, the evening outbound
Right.
was added.
So I take the Waterbury train?
Let me get this note.
You will maybe quietly, so you want
And people on the Danbury line do too. Speak loud enough into the microphone.
So certainly I would just say that, and I get it, right? I mean, I understand how many folks move on the New Haven line, how many folks move on the Danbury line, and how many folks move on the Waterbury line. So I do understand that. But, I would say that certainly the frustration as a commuter of Waterbury, and certainly many of the folks I talked to on the 11th, was the loss of not only the loss of an express, which is certainly a nice convenience, but it was also the time that it added to it. So I've heard some people, which I think is nice PR, say that the train time is only 1 minute longer. But if you do a comparison to when you got on the train in Waterbury versus when you got off in Stamford, and you looked at the old schedule, which was 5:52 you got on, and 7:17 you got off. And if you looked at the new schedule, you get on at 5:46, and you end up in your Stamford location at 7:24. You've added 13 minutes. When you look at it from station to station, it's a 13-minute increase in time, which is a pretty staggering 15% commute time. So I think certainly that was, is a commuter, that was disappointing to see that level of increase. And I would just couple that and be honest with that as a commuter of that line, and to see things like the Metro, the Martin Luther King schedule, to see every branch get an enhancement except for the Waterbury schedule, to see other branches, getting schedule enhancements and through trains back, and to see Waterbury lose service. It's frustrating, and quite frankly, if it was just one issue, you'd say, okay, I get it. We only have X amount of riders, but it just seems like it's a continual. And I was going to mention this as well, but they tie in. So when you look at busing substitutions, to go from an 8-month average from January to August of 7, and then go from an 8-month average of September to April of 24, it's frustrating. An average of 24. So you couple the busing substitutions with the fact that we're the only branch that doesn't get a Martin Luther King enhancement, when 90% of the state of Connecticut works, and most of the people on that branch work within the state of Connecticut, coupled with the busing substitution, it's just a very frustrating time. And I was sad that 15% impact of the schedule was frustrating.
It's also hard to grow the usage if you can't be consistent with service.
And from a service delivery perspective, we work very closely with CDOT to balance, the maximum delivery of service to the customers. I hear loud and clear, and I'm well aware of the negative impact to the Waterbury customers. We continually look at options for how we can enhance service on all lines. It comes down to availability of equipment. For example, the one extra through train on the Danbury was the one through train that you just spoke about. And we're looking at options to maybe minimize or shorten that 13-minute extension for that commute time that some customers have.
And as a commuter, I think, it's not one versus, I think we get that it's more of a state decision than a Metro North decision, and we get that, I get that. I appreciate it.
And we acknowledge it, and we don't minimize it because it's only because it's X people versus Y people. We actually try our best to address all the needs under the constraints we have.
Are there any council members wish to speak further on the new schedule impact, any issues associated with the schedule?
I think the only thing I'd like to add is that not so much this new schedule, but the previous new schedule that added that first northbound train to Danbury, so that the first train pulls into Danbury at about 8:40 a.m. This now allows people to commute to Danbury to jobs, and we'd really like to work with you to roll that, with Metro North, with DOT, and the mayor of Danbury, the first selectman of Bethel, and all the way up the line, to help promote the use of this new first train. It's going to be a good economic development tool, but if people who are currently working in Danbury aren't really tuned into the new train, it's gonna take a while to get them to start using it.
Yeah.
When you do a new service like that, is there a marketing plan that goes along with it? And if so, what is it?
Typically, Metro North doesn't do marketing plans within the state of Connecticut. I believe it's a CDOT, function within the state.
Do you do them in Grand Central?
As far as.
In other words, within Grand Central, within the New York environment that you control rather
Yes.
than the Connecticut environment
Yeah.
they control, do you advertise the addition of trains that might terminate in Connecticut but start in Grand Central?
We do have a marketing campaign out for the new schedules that
Yes.
are, you'll see them in car cards and you'll see them, it's a, poster size, marketing that talks about the new timetables and, the goals that we had set for these new timetables with reliability and safety and things like that. So we do some marketing.
But even within the state of New York, for specific train changes, there is no targeted marketing campaign. For example, if we were to add a train that serviced Katona that didn't exist previously, we don't market that on a per train basis.
Right.
Okay.
Our marketing is more global in
It's a
nature.
bigger picture, but it's out there.
Because I know sometimes when I see drop and sometimes within Grand Central, there's that gray folded, I'm not sure what it's called.
Mileposts?
Yeah,
Yep.
that you
Short
do,
one.
and that often lists out additions to service and such, but often there's not much mention of what's happening in Connecticut. Maybe that's not much is happening in Connecticut,
But
Well-
in any event, it's a missed opportunity. As Jim just said, this train is really a game changer
Mhm.
for people who want to commute north in the morning up to Danbury Line. Has never been there. And I remember, over the years, there were like 3 trains in the morning coming down before anything would come back up, and nothing came back up before 9 o'clock in the morning because everything was coming down. Now I've got one going up. That's terrific.
Mhm.
But if nobody knows about it, it doesn't help economic development in Danbury or Bethel, which are the 2 places where most logically people would end up. It doesn't help people in South Norwalk, or Stamford or Bridgeport who could connect with a train and go up. So it's a lost opportunity. It's a great new service, but we gotta find a way somehow, Rich, I think we should be looking to talk to somebody in the Economic Development Department in Hartford and say, how can we maximize this opportunity?
Yeah, I've already spoken with the mayor of Danbury and the first selectman of Bethel about this, and they're excited about trying to
Sure.
promote it, but.
No, I'll take that
we
point,
can-
well
yeah,
taken,
work
and
that.
we'll look into it. I mean,
Okay.
there's different ways we can do stuff like that through Connecticut rides and stuff like that when we do stuff, so I'll look into it.
Good.
And for the record, Laura Cordes has joined us as well.
Laura,
Councilmember.
take a cushy seat.
Just
Actually,
seems-
point anyone
take
you
a
want.
cushy seat.
Unless you really need me someplace else.
No.
This seems perfectly
Okay.
cushy. Thank you, good evening.
Yeah, and I think this plays into, within the 100-day plan, the 4th point of the 4 is communication. And to us, at least, sitting on this side, that just plays into communicating. When you guys do things well, let us know. Let the riders know, or have us help you let people know.
Point well noted, we have difficulty sometimes, especially over the last year, trying to portray our service as something to be proud of.
Right.
But actually, over the last couple of weeks, in particular with the May 11th schedule change, we now have a good foundation to regain that reputation that we had. And, although it might seem like it's not happening, we didn't plan to have a fire at Cos Cob to take out our flexibility there. We didn't plan that a private individual's tree would fall in that same block a couple of days later and screw up a PM rush hour. That's part of some of the constraints that we deal with from a reliability perspective. The schedule that Mike Schiffer's folks and the Metro North team put together is the foundation for the ability to deliver reliable service, both directions, all periods, based on a stable operating environment. But as we look at individual reliability of interlockings, trees, weather, rolling stock, other human events, those are the challenges with regards to how to minimize their impacts. Because one isolated event at one location has a ripple effect throughout the railroad for the day, or at least the AM rush or the PM rush.
What's the status of the fire, the switch?
The status of the switch is, we're building a rudimentary control panel to be able to potentially, what we call flip traffic. Post the incident, we were actually very lucky through the very hard work of our signal department to be able to restore the actual signals in the rail. So the way we've been operating since the fire is we have 2 tracks going westbound, 2 tracks going eastbound, and we have no ability to do any switching or change direction. In about a week or two, we should be at the point of getting the panel installed and tested, and that'll give us very limited functionality, so we'd be able to run 3 tracks west in the morning and then 3 tracks east in the evening to be able to restore that capacity. But we still won't have the ability to throw any switches, which means that in the 10-mile block between basically Harrison, New York, and Stamford, if the train's on the track and the train happens to be disabled or something happens, we don't have the ability of Cobb to reroute trains around that particular incident.
So, if I hear things correctly, the schedule itself hasn't been badly impacted on an ongoing basis, but if any sort of hiccup, it will. Is that right?
Absolutely. So, and that goes back to that message of 5 to 10 minute delays potential for an extended period of time. There are days when nothing happens within that block, and we, in an AM peak period, maybe have 8 or 10 trains that are maybe 6 to 8 minutes late arriving in GCT. Other days, such as yesterday or today, that 8 or 10 ends up to be 20 or 40 trains, based on some type of an event happening in that area where the lack of this flexibility generates a larger quantity of train delays. And we're gonna be in that mode until at least the end of the year, before we can actually rebuild that control house.
There was some comments that you would be analyzing the schedule after a few weeks. Is there anything that jumps out at you that you've seen already that, hey, this is a change we may look to make?
Yep, Mike?
I think there's a couple things. First of all, the constraint that John is speaking to effectively lowers our rail capacity in that segment by 33%. So that's not insubstantial. And it affects the peak of the peak mostly because you use, in the best case scenario, all 3 tracks for passing of zoned expresses and so forth. So I just wanted to highlight that. The other thing that wasn't anticipated to be in place with the implementation of the new schedule was that we have some ongoing work that's continuing for the next several weeks at Mott Haven Junction, which is where the New Haven and Harlem line merge with the Hudson line. And that has also entered some unanticipated delays into the schedule as it's written. What we have done is we've paid a lot of attention to kind of on our better days, and there have been a few, how the trains are performing, and we've seen that there was a progression of a reduction in delays on the AM peak on the New Haven line, which is good news there. However, we're also monitoring how people are redistributing themselves, because with the slight changes in times and with some of the sequencing, we're seeing, and we expected to see, a redistribution of our customers on various trains. In some cases, we've seen trains that run more locally become more popular than it had anticipated, and some that we thought would be very, very hot be less popular. And so what we need to do, and what we are doing, is we've been validating a lot of the comments that have come from probably a number of the individuals in this room regarding overcrowding with counts at Grand Central initially. And we try to count each train twice, get it on 2 good days though. We try not to get the days when the switch failure occurred or the tree was on the tracks and so forth. But on good days, you want to count that so you have something valid that you can compare against. Where possible, we can lengthen trains if there's cars available. And there's a couple of constraints that get into that, which John can probably speak to in a little more detail because some of it falls into the operational sector. One is if we have a train that's at a maximum length, and for the east end of this line, it's 10 cars, it's hard to add to that. What you can do is change stopping patterns and have a train stop ahead of that. But when you start doing that, then that affects, of course, the overall printed schedule as well as the crew schedules and that sort of thing. Where possible, though, for example, I believe today we resolved an issue on train 1429, which was overcrowded. We had reports of the overcrowding, and we were able to obtain an extra 2 cars and bring it from 8 cars to 10. So that's an example of something that we were able to do right away. Longer term, though, there are sometimes issues where you can't lengthen trains because of storage constraints at Grand Central, for example, where sometimes they're stored in the midday. You're probably aware there's a yard on the lower level of Grand Central, and trains have different length, the tracks have different length capacity. The real constraint isn't so much the platforms in Grand Central, it's the storage tracks down there as well, and that affects it as well as the availability of rolling stock. So that being said, we are looking systematically at things. There's also some connections that require longer waits. We are keenly aware of those, and we're doing what we can to see if there's a short-term way to address some of those. So I think, there's 2 things. One is how people are balancing out on the trains, and we think now that we're having a relatively quote-unquote normal week, we're starting to see some stability with how people are shifting their travel patterns, and that's helping with respect to what we can do with respect to train lengths within the constraints that we have. And again, we're working closely with John's folks on that, because it also has to do with how the cars are staged, serviced, and so forth. And then the second thing is with respect to where we can address some of the issues with connections and so forth. Some of them we may be able to do, some of them we might not be able to, and we're looking at that systematically as well.
As we get more and more of the new cars, is this storage situation at the lower level of Grand Central going to prevent adding more trains?
I think the fundamental constraint, and either of the 2 Johns can chime in, I think the fundamental constraint is the track capacity. So as we get new cars, they're not net added to the railroad because we're limited with what we can do with active storage tracks.
Yeah, and again, just at a high level, it's not necessarily storage within GCT that limits, the capacities on the trains. It's actually the platform lengths within GCT that limits the number of trains we can have platformed at any one time. For example, within GCT, we don't have all of the platforms being able to hold 10 cars, 12 cars, or 14 cars. We have some platforms that can only hold 5 cars. We have other platforms that hold 8. Some platforms hold 10. A very small number of platforms hold 12 or 14. So that limits your maximum train length you can operate. And then when you look at potentially adding more trains, you're limited by the headway within the signal system with regards to the number of trains you can actually funnel in to the 4 tracks along 3 lines into Grand Central. So there's a throughput issue. We're reaching our capacity with regards to volumes of trains entering GCT at any one time. And we're also limited on maximum train length, both on outlying stations and in the terminal.
But the midday storage is an issue in Grand Central, just with some of the pocket tracks are much more limited than others.
Yeah.
But we have almost the full complement of M8s now.
We actually have 336 out of the 405 delivery. We plan to be at around 380 in September. That's the delivery of all of the cars as married pairs. The delivery of the 25 single cars, the latest schedule is Kawasaki states they'll be delivered by the end of this year. However, the commissioning on those cars won't occur until the first quarter of 2015. So basically, by the end of this year, we'll have 380 M8s, all married pairs. We're going to have 25 singles delivered, but it's unlikely we'll have any single cars in service this year.
And that's a constraint for scheduling as well, because as we get to a point where we are constrained to even numbered trains, some trains do warrant a 9th car, but don't warrant a 10th car. And in fact, they might not be able to accommodate 10 cars for whatever reason. So the single cars will add to the flexibility, and until we have those, there's going to be some constraints there.
And the conversion of a subset of those 25 singles to the bar cars?
Not happening.
I think that's a question for the state of Connecticut.
It's under review.
Way under.
No,
Is there a decision date that you have?
not at this time, because we are re-evaluating the costs from Kawasaki, and we're looking at our engineer's estimates, so at this point, those things are being evaluated, so.
Do you-
Whatever would you want to add them?
Because for those people who.
They're light.
Okay, so we'll agree to disagree, but for those people who,
We want seats.
for those people who choose to have an opportunity to speak and have an opportunity to spend time with other people in a car, rather than infringing on the other people who want a quiet environment, it gives people a chance to have a loud environment. People who want to have an opportunity to have, on a 2-hour commute, a drink or two, whether it's a soda or a piece of popcorn, gives them the chance to do so. I don't think that 8 cars out of 405 is much of an issue.
No, the ability to communicate with other people is pretty good. And have a cocktail at the same time, it's a wonderful thing. And I know that the governor is pushing for it to do this. So, curmudgeons beware, there will be bar cars again.
Sadly.
Okay.
Every other municipality has gotten rid of them for a reason. Why we continue on with them, they are a blight. 99% of the people can't stand them. Yes, the bar people love them, but everybody else hates them.
Okay, when we took a poll, they did a lot better than 1% response rate.
I think there's more than 1% that want to.
The noisy, the people that want them are vigilant in wanting them. I mean, God forbid they should go a night or a day without a drink.
Okay, so we were on the new schedule impact issues. Did any other council member have questions regarding, Mike's making certainly kind of, definitely.
I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
Curmudgeons beware. You know, you gotta stop being a curmudgeon. You know, be positive or you shouldn't be here. Right?
Okay.
That's my comment.
So,
All right.
All right, so Jeff had
A
a
related comment.
Yes.
That didn't have to do with the bar cars, although I do want them back. And that was just anecdotally, I agree with the comment you made about people shifting their schedules. I've heard from a number of people at Stamford that they no longer ride the express in the morning because there's no way to get on the train, and there's definitely no seats available by the time it gets to Stamford. And instead, they're shifting to the limited locals that start in Stamford, which means further down the line, people that used to get on those trains are displaced because now they're finding there's no seats. I started taking what's now the 632, which is a limited local. It's SRO for the last 2 stops. When it gets to Rye, people can't get off.
Actually, I think the train you are referring to is definitely on our radar screen. That's been a particular issue, and we have heard from the folks in Rye about that. That's train 1311, I believe.
What time does that start?
It starts in Stamford at 6:32 a.m.
Yes, train 1311. Let me just verify that.
while you're doing that, I'd like to come back to the more global question, because I didn't realize that the fire was actually so sounding catastrophic to the system. When I hear that there's at times a 33% reduction in capacity, that's amazing. And if in fact they're going to be continuous 10 to 15 minute delays through the end of the year, after the winter that we just experienced, and after all of the, well, we're at the end of the winter and we're gonna have a reliable schedule, and suddenly we're not gonna have a reliable schedule. This is really bad news. And I hadn't really heard anybody say it that way before, so I wanna make sure that I'm hearing it the right way now.
Well, again, we need to take a balanced approach. It's not good news.
It's
Basically,
bad news. If we're getting 10 to 15 minute delays through the end of the year on a regular basis in peak hour trains, that doesn't sound like good news. It sounds like bad.
but no one from the Metro North side has ever said we're gonna get 10 to 15 minute delays due to this.
That's what I was hearing, so I'm trying to
It was
check
5 to
it.
10.
I'm sorry,
5
5
to
to 10, 5 to 10, all right.
5
5 to 10 on a regular basis is still.
On a sporadic basis, depending upon what else on the line happens to fail.
Okay, so
That's the
if,
key.
Is there any
how
way,
likely, what's the likelihood of delays on a regular basis? I mean, you say sporadic, can you tell me what that means? I know you know, on one day it's gonna be worse than on another, but looking system-wide on the New Haven line for the next 5-6 months, through peak time, we're looking at 10% of the time, 20% of the time?
We don't have enough running data at the moment to be able to give an estimate of that nature.
Okay.
We're gonna be in a much better place within a week or two, once we have the ability to address some of the capacity issues by being able to signal 3 tracks west in the morning and 3 tracks east in the evening.
Right, and that's actually an important distinction, because we will be able to do that 3 tracks in a direction.
Yes.
In the morning
Correct.
and in the evening in how many weeks?
1 to 2 weeks.
So it's not till the end of the year, it's 1 to 2
Yes.
weeks that we're going to.
So by the end of May, hopefully things will stabilize.
Yes.
And at that point, then you'll be able to assess the impact of the fire and how likely it is that trains are gonna be delayed through the rest of the year.
Correct. And I would venture to say it will be much better than it is on our current estimate, which is the 5 to 10 minute sporadic or likely delays due to this constraint.
Sporadic and likely are very different words.
But I think, John, what you said earlier, that, John, you need to hear clearly is.
I'm trying to do that.
All right, no, because as John explained it the first time around, is that it's that block, so maybe you can
It's a
explain
10
that. It's a
mile
10-mile
section.
section that you can't switch
I
over.
get that,
Yeah.
there's
So-
a problem on the line.
Right.
We're gonna have three tracks soon,
Yep,
and then hopefully things will calm down.
correct.
And but then the question is, once that happens,
Mhm.
how likely is it that we're going to continue to experience 5 to 10 minute delays during peak hour? And the reason why I'm asking is because I think, going back to the communications idea here, that people have got to know what to expect. It's just, they've got to know. And they haven't had that opportunity for so long. And I gotta tell you, people are just fed up to the max. Now, it's a little less now because the weather's nice, so it's not quite so bad to get to the train station or to get from Grand Central to where you're going to work. But still, you know, adding time to trains is really detrimental. You know that.
Absolutely, which is why we took out a good amount of time on running times in this schedule.
Right.
And even with taking out the running time and losing this flexibility, the current estimate, and it's been proven over the last 2 weeks, is a percentage of AM peak inbound trains arrive 5 to 10 minutes late.
Let me take a crack at trying to interpret, I think, what you're saying and what folks are hearing, and tell me if I'm wrong. Right now, over the next couple of weeks, we are still constrained by that 33%. That is, we have only 2 tracks in each direction in that segment. After 2 weeks or so, when we have the temporary control panel up, we will have the ability in the morning to have 3 tracks inbound, and in the afternoon, 3 tracks outbound, manually switched, and that will happen in those few weeks. The year-long issue is one of flexibility if things go wrong, which is until the hut is completely rebuilt, you won't have the opportunity to do it from central control on the fly the way they used to be able to do if there is a problem along the line. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
So there's a certainty, reasonable certainty, for delays, the 5 to 10 minute delays over the next couple of weeks while we are constrained.
Yes.
Beyond that, then it's not so much certainty, there's a higher level of probability if things go wrong that things will be disrupted. Is that fair?
Correct. So if, for example, we didn't lose the CIL, and we didn't lose the interlocking, if we were to have a disabled train on one of the tracks, we'd be able to route other trains around them with a minimal delay to the subsequent trains, because we can throw the switches within a minute. Right now, we don't have the ability to throw the switch at all.
At all.
So if that one train is stopped for 2 hours, the train behind him is stopped for 2 hours. in the future, once we get this panel in, we still won't be able to run around that train in a timely manner. So it's hard to say how often will it occur, since it's a probability on top of a probability.
But clearly, the issue becomes less likely in 2
Yes.
weeks.
Correct, and that's good news.
Right.
Again, from a global perspective, the question is one of reliability.
Mhm.
And we've got a new schedule where we were told we're gonna be more reliable. Then we have a couple of more incidents happen, you know, no one's blaming anybody, they happen.
Correct.
You've got to deal with them.
Yes.
You're dealing with them. Hopefully, that's gonna, you know, correct itself very soon.
Mhm.
Once that happens, let's say the end of May, just for convenience sake, how close are we going to be, on average, to running the schedule that was going to be reliable? That's the question the commuter wants to know. And perhaps you can't answer that tonight, but as soon as you can, then we should be talking to people about that. And you should be talking with us, and we can talk to commuters and say, look, this is the real world here, this is what's gonna happen. And that's what people want to know.
We're all on the same page. The schedule is written such that every single train will arrive on time, should everything work as intended. Once you add in the events that disrupt the normal operation, it could be a tree falling, it could be a switch failing, it could be a police activity along the right-of-way. Once that isolated event occurs, depending upon where and when it happens, it has either minimal effect, meaning only that one train is impacted, or it could mean 20 or 30 trains are impacted. And the impact on those 20 or 30 trains could be 5 minutes, or it could be 20 minutes. There is no easy answer to the question you ask, although we all understand the concerns of all commuters. People want to know that I will be on time most of the time, and then the question is how you define most of the time. And that kind of leads you down the road of, you know, on-time performance numbers and what do they mean. But Metro North is working with the state of Connecticut and all of the stakeholders to be able to deliver on a regular basis every single train on time most of the time.
I think if I could, maybe what we need to do is to change the phraseology a little bit. And that would be to share with riders what you're going through. Let them know you had a catastrophic fire, took you down to 2 tracks rather than 3, and it took out a lot of the flexibility that you usually have. By working with, let me finish, and let me just paint the whole story, then you can decide what you've done, what you haven't done. That you work with your signal department, and you put some stuff back. You are rebuilding some of the functionality, and you hope to have 3 tracks in 2 weeks. Between now and then, there will be 5 to 10 minute delays. And if you need to be someplace at a certain time, take an earlier train than what's scheduled, because we can't guarantee it'll be there when it says it will be there. It may be 5 or 10 minutes late. Well, we're working to get you there as soon as we can. However, after that point, early June, whenever it may be, we'll have all 3 tracks back. The ride should go back to the scheduled times. However, if and when there is an incident, if there is an accident like there was last week with that crane that knocked down the power, whatever it might be, you have much less flexibility than you used to. And therefore, be prepared that when there is a problem, it will probably take longer than it used to for you to overcome the problem because you have less flexibility. Therefore, people know in their mind, when I hear there's a problem, I should probably be prepared to work around that and deal with it, whether that means working from home or whatever else. But if you set them up to say, I haven't heard anything in a couple of weeks, therefore I don't remember anything about the fire, and I don't remember what's happened there. All I know is I'm late every day by 5 minutes, and they don't tell me why. And then something happens, and you say, well, everything was back to normal. You said everything was back to normal, but now something happened, and half the trains got stuck on the tracks for 2 hours or whatever it might be in the summer, as you just said. People won't know why. If you let them have information ahead of time and prepare themselves for it, they will be more accepting when they hear what you have to say.
That's actually our greatest challenge. And as Sue started to say, that Sunday night, you know, the fire happened Saturday. We needed to assess what the impacts were. That Sunday night, prior to the 11 PM news, we had a press release out with the information you just stated. That following Monday, on the MTA info site, on the Metro North page, that there was a full-page description, almost verbatim, of what you actually stated. And we actually had one or two updates over the last 2 weeks to tweak the accuracy of the message to the customer as we got further down the road of exactly what the fix was and how long it will take. So we actually have that posted on the website. The challenge is, how do we get commuters or the people that want to know to go look at the website page to say, this is where it is?
You need to push that information out. I'm not gonna go looking on the website every day just in case you tweaked it, and now I know something a little bit better. If you push it out, if you tweet it, if you send an alert out, if you do a street drop, if you use us and our email list.
We have done that. We have tweeted it out with the link to the website. We have sent it through our email alerts with the link to the website. Obviously, the explanation that's online is too lengthy to put in a single individual email alert or tweet, and so we do send people to it. And like John said, we update that site as we have news. And
I
it
can
does-
say
I think the only thing that, and I appreciated the information,
Actually, I
and thought
kind
it
of
was
find-
very helpful.
I kind of find it concerning that you didn't seem to be aware that it's there.
Well, that's the
I
question I was
saw
gonna
it.
ask you
And
guys,
I'm
because
kind of-
let's
not
turn
aware
this
of
on
any
you
of
guys.
this. Yeah, but-
Why aren't you guys going to the site?
As members
I'm not
of
going
the
because no one's
council-
told me to go look.
To the website? I go to the website all the time, and I don't even take the train.
But we
Okay.
have sent
No, I'm
out,
just
you signed
serious.
up for
I
an
mean,
email
it's
alert.
there.
Right,
So
and I got an
that's the
email and I
environment
understood.
that people are in. They're
Yes.
But I
just
think
going
the
to the
fear
website.
is-
That's right.
So
not to
you have to
continue
find
to
other
send a
ways to
message.
communicate.
Well, why
This is-
can't you guys go to the site?
Why
I'm
can't
not
you
gonna go.
communicate?
It's everybody's got
But
technology.
I'm in a
let me ask
business,
you,
I gotta
how
tell you,
often
when
would
I
you
got something
want
to say to
us
my
send the
clients,
same
I tell them.
message?
Exactly.
I don't wait
Speaking
for
of
them to come to
communicating,
me.
could we go one at a time, please?
Please, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so where were we?
Let's talk about schedules.
Okay, so I will say this, you know, for certain. I got the email Sunday night, I remember this at 11:21. Had an alert. That for, I mean, listen, I mean, I get it, all right, the website.
Yeah.
It's
It's got
a good use
pictures,
of
it
the
has
picture.
verbiage, it has.
The key is
Did you
the
do a seat
email
drop?
alerts.
Yes.
Did you do a seat drop?
And it helped, and people were chilled because they
We are
understood what
actually
was
getting
going
out
on.
of, gradually getting out of the seat drop business.
But I think what happens is, as a week go by, 2 weeks go by, people forget, and then they're still delayed. So to send an update maybe would be helpful.
So if I just wanted to really quick finish my train of thought. So I did get that initial email at 11:21. It did push me to the website. It did have the, you know, when fully operational at the row house.
Yep.
But to Mitch's point, I think a few things happen. One is so you're really good with, hey, you know, it's the giant game. You know, I get those quite a bit. So maybe I just think maybe it's the repetitiveness of it might help. And then B, I know you can't really market this, but maybe there's a way to get. So for me, the best thing I've ever done is get the alerts, right? So it's continual. Maybe there just needs to be more of a
Filtering.
filter and emphasis on the use of the alerts.
There are lots of
I
ways to
think the
do it.
most effective way to get to the writers is if we had better, more timely information on the platform billboards, you know, the 2 lines with the, that's one way. The other way is, unfortunately, the new cars only have 1 line of 20 characters or something like
Yep.
that. And so the bandwidth is limited, but maybe looking ahead to busier times with more trains and more cars and so forth, we should upgrade the displays on the train and program the station displays to give real-time information. Because the spoken word in the train and on the platforms is not very good.
And so, well, I'm sorry, Terry's been really quiet all night, and he certainly wants to say anything, something. So, Terry.
Well, I'll say 2 things. The first thing is, if we eventually get a website up, you could connect to our website and give us that feedback so the commuters could get on the Commuter Rail Console website and see that too. So it would be multiple opportunities to do it. I don't fault you guys at all for this. And the second thing is, we gotta change the logo. It's not Metro North New Haven anymore. It's time to change the logo.
Agreed.
Thank you.
So, agreed. So just, you know, kind of, Mike, you've been very patient. We've been talking about the schedule and a few other issues all evening. Jeff?
One last comment, I would encourage you to keep the C-drops. It's a very effective mechanism of knowing that you reach the clients. They get on the train, they sit there, they read it. I might toss them on the floor when they're done, but they do read them. And if you need to get a message to people, I would encourage you to continue to use that. People still buy papers, right? They still read stuff that's on their seat. And if you've got a message, you gotta deliver. That's the only way I know that people are gonna read it.
And so good.
I'll do this, I'll bring it back to the commissioner, but I work directly for them. He lives by the internet. He wants to communicate by the internet and other means. He wants to get away from the C-drops, but I'll confirm that. Because again, I'm very concerned. As we talked, John, going back 4 months ago, about using you guys to be communicators. You guys need to help us too and say to these folks, it's on it. These guys should get beaten up if they're not putting it on the website, but if it's on that website, shame on everybody who has any form of technology to get, exactly.
But I'm not going to your website because it's not optimized for a BlackBerry,
Well,
okay?
you don't have a computer.
I'm never at my desk.
I'm
not
just
with
saying-
clients all
I'm
day.
just
Okay,
bringing
if I'm
it
at my
up.
desk.
So, we've all made,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
I gotta say one more thing.
All right.
You go where the customer is.
Exactly.
Well, you're not. You
Then
just heard that someone said that the best way to reach the customers is through a seat drop, and you're saying, no, we don't want to do that. Okay, you don't want to do that, but that's not marketing.
I didn't say I did not want to do that,
You
John.
said the
Please
commissioner
listen
did.
again, because that's the same thing John tried to explain something, and I'll say too. I'm gonna go back to the commissioner and confirm, would he like to still do C-drops? Or would he like to use, like he's telling me, use the technology of where we're going in the future to communicate so it's at everybody's fingertips? And you guys jumped all over this company here tonight about why they didn't communicate. And I'm gonna bring that message back to Jim as well. That wasn't fair. That's all I have to say.
It's completely.
I'm not, all right, so let's move on to the next topic. This is really,
All
and I
comments are
think
actually valid.
I think Jeff was trying to make, I don't think anyone jumped all over. I think Jeff was trying to make what he thought was a good-natured suggestion to try to be, to try to get it to the client. I think some of us talked about seeing it on the website. I mean, I think it was a frank display of ideas. I don't think anybody really jumped on anybody, just from
No, Jim, they said that if they not communicate.
I don't think anybody said they didn't communicate.
I'm not sure, but listen, let's move on. Quite frankly, John had talked about LCD monitors and perhaps using this, perhaps communicating some of these things via the LCD monitors, which is in the 100-day plan. It's a good segue to that.
I just want to see if we can finish up any questions.
I
on
thought we were all done with
scheduling.
schedule questions.
Are we done with schedules?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
I
it.
apologize.
Mike, you only wanted to stay till 7:20.
No, I apologize.
If you stayed till
I-
7:26, you wouldn't have been late.
I had a pre-existing commitment, and this was added to the agenda for the day, but
It was
I'm
excellent
happy
discussion.
to talk in any time.
No, thank you for letting me be here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Very nice.
Can I back us up for a minute? I know I was a couple minutes late,
Yes,
but
ma'am.
I'm sure you approved the minutes?
No, we did not. So what we did, Sue, was we moved a few things around. We didn't have a quorum at that time, so
Okay.
we didn't approve the minutes. We're
I'll
gonna do
wait
some of
till
the
you-
Metro North. We'll go to the operations report, and then 100-day plan, we'll do some of the branch lines, and then we're gonna do that.
Okay.
So, segue to the 100-day. So I did give everyone a copy. There's been quite a bit of really work done and completed checks since our last meeting. So we thought while we had the Metro North folks here, if there was any in-progress items that you wanted to get additional information on, it would be a good time to ask questions. And so I just have 2 quick questions and I'll go 100. So I do think a great, really perhaps maybe one of the best vehicles, obviously, and we all know this, for even things like the New Haven line is actually seeing it at a platform and on a station. So that to me is, of the in progress, is the most exciting to me, and I just was curious if we could see where we were on the moving to improving communications, bullet 3 and bullet 4. If I could have, if we just have an update on that, I appreciate it. It's the improve availability of real-time train information to stations, and then develop a project plan with CDOT by June to install similar monitors. If you have an update on that, I appreciate it.
Okay, bullet 3 is a New York initiative. That was,
I
okay.
apologize, you're right, I was
Okay.
dovetailing it from bullet 4.
You're more
Yes,
interested
ma'am.
in bullet 4,
Yes.
which is the Connecticut,
Yes. Yeah.
Version.
thank you,
I get it.
of the New York initiative that we've started. And we have something that we've delivered to the state of Connecticut for their review, and that's where we are right now.
John, from your perspective, budget, or you have to finalize number, I mean, from your perspective, the LCD monitor plan?
Just, again, we're looking at that as a opportunity. We have, as I said, I think at the last meeting in New Haven, we're trying to roll out New Haven's VMS, and we're working through that. So we're not trying to hold things up, but, you know, there's been some challenges that we're getting that system up and running, so that as we go into other locations, if there's anything we can learn that benefits us from doing it, and not to say that we're tripping over things, but don't trip over them again, so it's more effective and efficient. So we're looking at it. It's between myself and Ian and Jim. So actually, I've been in touch with Sue about getting a meeting together to talk about that proposal, so.
Any time frame?
Oh, good.
It just, I can't even respond on that yet. Time frame. It's really it's on me.
I mean, we talking years?
No.
Oh, for implementation, yes.
But years of the decision on how we're gonna roll it out.
No,
That's how I
no,
took
a
it.
decision I would think is gonna come a little quicker, right?
Yeah, absolutely, it's just, that
years?
was your question, was about the
Implementing.
decision.
Partially, yes.
But rolling it out will take years.
Rolling it out will take a few years.
And is it all the stations that we're looking at?
No. No, we're not looking at the branch lines.
Yeah, I wasn't hoping, I wasn't thinking Derby was getting an LCD
Yeah,
monitor.
you
When we can take care of you, you're gonna retire, right?
Yeah, I got 15 more years.
We'll give everybody a smartphone.
Would be
Get the
cheaper,
information
absolutely.
on the smartphone, unless you're in dark territory.
Touche.
It's true.
No, we, based on previous discussions we had with the DOT, we prioritized stations, and we gave a proposal that we thought met what their expectations were.
Is it asking, and again, I mean, I realize it's so early in the process, but when you look, so obviously some of the bigger ones, you know, New Haven, Bridgeport, I mean, certainly, you know, Stanford stand out. I mean, do you have an idea, an account of what you consider would be the main stations that you know, you would look at?
Oh, yeah, it's your higher ridership stations on the New Haven line. There's about a dozen stations.
12, okay.
Can you help me better understand, when we talk about these monitors, will they be on the platform?
They're gonna be at critical decision-making locations. So if you're coming and you have to, you need to know if you're gonna go up and over to the other side, let's say, that's where we've identified, and actually the locations are identified in the plan. The key with the proposal is that we get at least one monitor at each of these, as many stations as we can get, actually. And then I think that this is a buildable type program over the course of many, many years, depending on funding and all sorts of other things. But the key was to get at least one monitor in each station. It's a 9-line monitor. It identifies the next 9 trains that are coming through. It has the train number, it has the departure time, it has the destination, it has the track assignment, and it tells you the status, whether it's on time or it's running late or whatever. So if you're familiar with the signs that we have in Stanford, you've seen them, that's basically what it is. Oh, it also flips your station stops, you should see the station stops on that. The only difference is Stanford is hardwired in, this will be a cellular feed. We've had great success with that, it's in a number of New York stations, we've been testing it for a couple of years. And, you know, we obviously are rolling that out in the New York stations. That's also a multi-year project. So this is about the same time frame as the New York one, sort of.
So that's encouraging to hear, and I'm very glad, because when you can see the ones in Stanford, it's great. And I think your point about getting to decision points is very helpful. So as you come in from the garage, you can see the monitor. However, we're about to move from 1 garage in Stanford to 3, possibly 4. We have Gateway, we've got a whole bunch of other areas where now you'll be coming onto a single platform rather than coming onto it up and over that allows you to get access to a whole series of platforms. So
Well, Stanford has a whole different communication project that we're working on. It's funded by the Tiger 3 grant. And that will include gate curtains, like if you're familiar, anybody travels to Yankee Stadium, you see gate curtains that we have there. It has gate curtains, it has the monitors, and it has the platform signs. So that's a bigger communication project for next year, 2015.
okay, so we will have monitors actually on the platform in Stanford?
Yes, yes.
Because right now that's a huge drawback. You come off the up and over, you
That's
go
part
down,
of the
then
new-
you don't know that
Yeah.
up there it said they're now 10 minutes
Just
late.
like the ones in New Haven. Have you seen the ones in New Haven?
I've not.
Because they're.
How about 125th?
Yeah, just like those. Mhm. That's
Yeah, the
right.
one in-
It'll show 3 lines of information for the next 3 trains.
Yeah, the one in Stanford kind of coming through the pedestrian tunnel works out very well. The only thing, we had mentioned last year, I guess at some point, about the issue of the contrast on them, that they're white lettering on red background. And every time you've got the big central space, and everyone has to walk right up to the screen to read it, and then they head off for the tunnel, so. If there was, and I understand that you're having red for the New Haven line and blue, so you're using that protocol elsewhere, so, you know.
Red's a problem on CRTs because it bleeds and it fades slowly. It doesn't have the definition of the other colors, green in particular.
Good point. Terry?
Just to catch up, because I think, and I love Mr. Redeker, but I have to say that rail and busway could communicate a little better than they do. But what we're seeing-
trust me.
And I know it's gonna happen, I know we're getting there. But I think a lot of the stuff we're talking about is gonna happen on the rail, the Connecticut Fast Track, which is opening March of next year, in terms of ticketing, in terms of signs, in terms of computer applications. So what I see is that while it will start with Connecticut Fast Track to get all those applications up, it's gonna bleed over almost immediately to a lot of issues we're talking about here. And I think the contracts that we're gonna have for the busway will end up being the same kind of contracts we're gonna have here. So a lot of the questions and situations I heard about communication and signs and applications and ticketing, you know, you get on and you get one ticket and you can go from here to Washington, or you can get on a bus, or you can get on a train. A lot of that stuff is evolving as we speak, so I wanna make sure that everybody's aware of that, and it's not as far away as you think. Yeah, I mean, again, it's the fast track is, I think, driving some of that, but those contracts are gonna evolve into contracts for rail, I believe.
Have you been in our building? Because I think you sat in some of the meetings I've been in recently.
Yes, I have. Well,
No, because, you know, like what you're saying is, there is discussions in our bureau between us and the bus side of what's going on. And, you know, again, I'm not trying to say New Haven line versus the Springfield, New Haven, Hartford Springfield line and stuff we're doing there and other places, but we're spending money there. So some of the stuff that we're doing over there, as some of the money that is split federal and state money, we're using to, again, use in the future, where we would be just using all state money again. So ticketing and, you know, technologies.
he didn't pay me off for this. I offered that myself.
No, you know, I mean,
Very nice. Any other questions on the 100-day plan? Okay.
Has there been any numbers, cost? I mean, nobody really wants to address that, and I try to get the president to address it.
Cost.
That, you know, we have no sense of timing, no sense of cost, how long it's gonna take to restore the line to optimum operability.
I believe at various number of the events, I think the last one was at the Steam Cafe, I think. The answer that Jim Redeker and Joe Giletti gave was it's gonna take a number of years, and I heard the number of $3 billion spoken about. So, you know, as far as a timeline, it's a year's worth of work to get the New Haven line to what I'll call best in class. There's been years of minimal investment in the infrastructure, as everyone has spoken about, you know, regularly. The line has received maintenance activities, but a lot of times maintenance activities are just that. They're the minimal amount of work to keep the railroad operating safely, the significant amount of investment that the state needs to put in the movable bridges. You know, talking about reliability issues, you know, that's a single point failure, whereby the fact that, you know, the bridge is not as, you know, locked in as it needs to be, it moves a little bit, and for safety reasons, it drops the track circuits, it slows all 4 tracks from 45 miles an hour down to 15. Those are the things that are causing the train delays and a lot of the repetitive reliability issues in the infrastructure. So it's years worth of work, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. I think at this last meeting or a previous meeting, I said, well, what if there was no financial constraint? Let's say our friend here gave us a check for $10 billion. Okay, great, we have the funding. How long will it take to schedule the work? do the procurements, get the contractors on board. Every time you start to do work, for that period of time, you reduce capacity. If you reduce capacity and you don't remove trains or you don't increase running time, you're gonna have late trains due to that work. And I think Jim Rediker did a good job at Steam Cafe talking about that. It's a balance of throughput and running time to maximize the benefit to the state of Connecticut and to the customers.
And I apologize, John did have another 100-day.
Yeah, the close call reporting system.
Yep, close call reporting system, I think it might be here in another document in the month of June, which is 2 weeks from now. We should have our initial IMOU, which is implementing a memorandum of understanding, processed with our first group of unions, which are the ACRE folks, the Association of Commuter Rail Employees, which are our train and engine crews. They will then be followed in kind of a priority basis, more likely with our track department group, which is International Brotherhood of Teamsters, and all of the other crafts within the railroad. And we're targeting sometime late first quarter of 15 to have all of the unions and all of the paperwork process done, to have them part of this close call reporting system. And Metro North is the first commuter agency to go into this process at the maximum 100% level, meaning that all employees and all physical locations across the property are going to be covered by this close call reporting system. The other people that are involved in this at the moment are in a very pilot stage, where they pick a particular yard location or a particular craft. Metro North is committed to do this 100% across all our crafts.
Thank you. Okay, and I apologize for operations report. Whereas I emailed it out, I did not print out copies. So I know the busing substitutions off the top of my head, so I'll be okay.
Yeah, I'm here for you
Oh, you're
guys.
awesome.
You guys,
Thanks.
come on, don't jump on each other.
Danbury's actually beating you out this year.
I saw that. I did, by the way. I did.
Apologize for coming late.
No worries.
I only printed about 6, so.
We don't
Who's your 6 best friends?
I'm good. I'm good. You can filter them
Do it
out.
all you want.
Danbury's,
So,
It's off peak,
so peak, except for the-
continuous off peak.
You got it?
and weekend.
You got it on your computer? Come on now.
Thank you, sir.
there you go. All right, so operations report, does anyone have questions based upon the operations report? Okay.
How many M2s, 4.6s are left?
Let me just look up that number. I believe it's somewhere around 120 to 140 cars.
There was on a hot one coming up. No fun.
Now, when you're in a hot car, do you report it to the conductor or do you
Send an email.
send an email?
We'll see it.
Okay.
I didn't see anything lately.
Just want to make sure.
Mitch has been happy.
See?
I will
Mitch has been
say
happy.
you usually do.
No, I sent one the other day because I was on the 541. It was a new track, a different consist.
Yep.
And the conductor didn't make any announcements what train it was, nor did he tell us what was off, when we were arriving. There was nothing. So, and when I asked, the PA doesn't work. Well, because I was also an older car. And the PA did work because they announced that somebody lost a wallet, and that they were ready to go. And then tonight, I was on the 607, and that was hot. Whole car, whole train.
Okay, I misspoke. There's actually less cars available now. 140 cars was back in March. Actually, right now, we have 112 of the old cars available. It's 52 M2s and 60 triplets. So the M4s and M6s, there's 60 of those, and the M2s, there's 52.
The breakdown between service, for the M8s, it's pretty good, but
Yep.
it's not where you want to be.
When you say breakdown for service?
The period between breakdowns.
Oh, mean distance between
200,000.
failures, yes. From a mean distance between failure perspective, the
Correct.
M2s are running, M8s now are running around 200,000, I think it says on this.
What's the, where do you want to be?
Yeah, 200.
We should be at 280,000 this year. A lot of that is some delays on Kawasaki's part with actually delivering some of the warranty corrections that are causing some of the train delays.
They fixed the leak in the front doors?
Yes, they have the fixes. Kawasaki actually, in New Haven Yard, has a leased facility. They actually have 2 locations. They have an acceptance site, and they have a warranty modification site. The cars, as of last year, went through the first round of what we call FMI, or Field Modification Instruction Application. They're currently going through the second round of those mods. Those mods are gonna be ongoing probably through the end of 2015, where Kawasaki, under their cost and their labor and their material, addresses the reliability and contractual, outstanding items on the fleet.
I was on a new car riding down from Fairfield to Stanford. And I've never been in a car like this, but the truck, one of the trucks on the car was fighting the rails. It would go jerking side to side, and it would go thump once in a while, it was, I don't know, it's like they put a motor in and it had the wrong set of wheels that didn't match the other wheels in the truck or something.
Could be, again, if you have whenever you're on a car like that, if you can call in or email in the car number, we actually do a reasonable good job following up on all of the reports we get.
Okay, I wrote it out.
All right, so, thanks, John. So I'm gonna ask my Waterbury question. I know I mentioned a little bit, and then, so I won't have any branch line issues. But, so.
You're very optimistic, gentlemen.
Yeah, I am. I take the water out, how can I not be? Okay. So, I want to talk about this a little bit more, the busing substitutions and really the impact on ridership. So the third quarter of fiscal year 13, the branch saw an increase of almost 10% on the line, which was substantial for the Waterbury branch. I mean, in its heyday, before the summer busing in 2012, we were on target to hit 400,000 rides. So it was good. I thought we rebounded in that third quarter. And up until then, we had a busing substitution rate of about 7 a month. And some months really good. January had 3, February 2013 had 4, March 2013 had 3, April had 0. So we had some good months. And then I guess to the core, I'm trying to see, it's almost like it just can't, and I'm really not trying to be critical. It can't get that bad that quick. Because from January to August, you only had 7 on average a month. And then from September to April, you went to 20, and I said 24, I meant 23 bus on average over a same 8-month period. So now you see the effects of it when you see the numbers, right? So now you see an 8% impact. So I guess my question, and it will dovetail, and we'll have a branch line question, is, do you have any, is there anything that stands out? It was such a dramatic, it's a 300% increase in busing substitutions in 8 months. Is there anything that stands out?
That was an accident. Not
is there anything that stands out to you, and how hopeful are you by having the diesels originate out of Stanford and perhaps the enhanced maintenance that there may actually be an impact?
I'll try to answer the question. The service reliability on the Waterbury is not strictly the reliability of the diesels. The diesels do play a significant role in the reliability, and one of the main reasons for switching the dispatchment location from New Haven to Stanford is New Haven Yard is chock full of cars. And New Haven Yard struggled to be able to bring the Waterbury diesels in, around midnight, do the inspections on the diesels, switch the yard, move the diesel from one location to another to add lube oil or fuel. And the diesels were being dispatched out of the yard late to head up to Waterbury for the first trains due to yard constraints within New Haven. To alleviate those yard constraints and their additional benefits, the dispatching location was moved to Stanford. That doesn't have that same level of activity. New Haven has a large MU shop there. cars are being cut out for inspections, repairs, wheel true. The other benefit in moving the cars from New Haven to Stamford is it gives us greater flexibility to address a diesel failure. The Danbury Minis run down to Stamford, so if the Waterbury Mini happens to have an issue, we can cycle it out at Stamford a lot easier than in New Haven, because in New Haven, we didn't have a spare Mini available. And if, John, you want to add?
No, you're right on, yeah, that's exactly right. And now we know there's always a standby mini in Stamford because of this new schedule that we.
Yeah. So that's the equipment part of it. The other issue on the Waterbury, and obviously a lot of this is from memory and recollection, and I'm not as young as I used to be. In the fall season with slip slide, for whatever reason last year, the Waterbury had a number of very bad days slip slide wise. So I recall there were a number of weekends, as we reduce, as you don't have a frequency of train service on the lines, the leaf residue remains built up. So for safety reasons, a number of weekends last fall, we intentionally bussed, and then we operated our rail washer up there, by Sunday night, to make sure the rail was cleaned so we could run the regular AM service Monday through Friday. So some of the weekend busing was due to slip slide. The other issue on the Waterbury that we run in with some frequency is, believe it or not, we have an issue with all-terrain vehicles riding up and down the lines, and actually a lot of police activity on that particular line. We had a number of train to vehicle collisions. There's no way to recover on that on a single track line. So due to that police activity or a washout of a certain area, we needed to bus.
Okay.
We're not in, no matter what Sue wants to believe, we're not in the bus business.
I'm good with that.
She's good with that. Sure. We want to run trains. And for us to run trains, we have to have the infrastructure, the equipment, and the people to do it. The Waterbury line provides us the greatest challenge. There is no recovery from a failure on the Waterbury. We don't have a spare equipment set in Waterbury should a northbound train happen to fail en route. Any failure on a Waterbury ends up to be non-recoverable. And once you have that non-recoverable event, believe it or not, calling CT Transit is the most expeditious way to be able to recover from that.
Greater Bridgeport Transit would be.
Or Greater Bridgeport,
Which I want to, so it's for a little frustrating to be in Bridgeport and to be waiting for buses to come when there's a bunch of them right next door in Bridgeport. Another story, another day.
Yep.
She'll side with you on this one.
No, I
And she
agree.
calls me to see what I can do with the transit side of our house.
Let me tell
No,
you, we are working
this is-
on improving the bus
No.
substitutions.
Well, I
Both
spoke with Doug about it, and he's gonna make a better effort to reach out to Metro North to see if they can provide the service. Doug
We'll be
will-
going out this year for RFP. So, yeah, we're gonna be reaching out to Bridgeport, we'll be reaching out to, I think Hart is in the state of Connecticut. Peter Pan really stepped up this year. We have not used Peter Pan, but they seem to be expanding and they're really stepping up. You've seen them on the Danbury. And Leprechaun, which is based on the other side of the river, they're coming over also to help. And so, yeah, we are really reaching out wherever we can. We just recently met with CT Transit, to talk to them about what we can do jointly to improve the bus substitutions when we have that there. And, we are really aggressively trying to improve that service in spite of the fact that we prefer to run trains. We recognize that there are a lot of bus substitutions even for planned work, for instance, the Danbury. So.
Any other questions on the operations report? Okay. So we'll
Can I
kind of
run cover
dovetail.
for you, Jim, on that?
Yeah,
Is that
no,
you're
and I'll be honest with you, that was and I'm not, that was one of the most complete answers. I appreciate that. Like the slip in, I don't mean that, I mean like the slip inside, I never realized that, the ATV and the police. I do see where there's some rural areas where I could see that happening by, maybe off the Devon area when it is, but it was.
It takes.
I don't love it, but I mean, I understand it better.
One thing on the report, I know we'll talk about this next month in greater detail, but just so you know, from a MDBF reporting perspective.
Yes.
Metro North no longer to the MTA board reports individual MDBFs of 2s, 4s, and 6s. You know, the total fleet size is only 112. The number's becoming kind of meaningless and they're being retired. So what we do, we actually combine the 2s, 4s, and 6s with one MDBF number. They all run in a commingled pool, and a train delay, this is actually a measure of a train delay as opposed to per fleet, availability. So I just suggest for future reports, we combine those numbers together.
And what I was talking about, Jim, was that for what we taught, you were tasked as a subcommittee chair of the report. So I was gonna run cover for you, because I know we were supposed to meet at 6 tonight. Deputy Commissioner Berry looked at the stack of the reports that they generate for us. And because we have our service meeting tomorrow in New York, wants to go over that with John. And as I've been here for 4 years, these reports have been generated, and John asked us that, I think, about a month ago.
A month or two, yeah.
What do we really want? And so, I hate to say this to the council, but if we can just take a step back for a short period of time, we, the department, and them are gonna go over the list of the reports and the data. And then, again, I'm committed from the department, and John will sit with Jim and work on a new report, if that's okay. Because again, I know you've been tasking him to get the report going. But I just want everybody to know, Jim, I know you don't need coverage, but, like I said, I'm not afraid to be vocal. And this point, it's really on us, because that's one thing Anna does to me a lot. She'll question, and she asked me point blank, I'm looking at these reports, maybe there's some other stuff, because she's bringing some experience down from the north when she was on the T, and she may want to see some other data that we have to work with them and sit with them. We're going to start this tomorrow during our discussions of looking at the report data and saying, okay, maybe some of this stuff we're not using as much as we used to, for whatever reason, but there's some other stuff we'd like to get, and John has to work with us and figure out if he can get that data, and then we can start coming to a report that I know you guys want to use in the future, better for your for the commuters.
We, as a lot of other companies, are good at generating volumes of data. Data does you no good unless you can glean information out of it. What I'd ask the council to do is don't think about the actual metrics, MDBF or whatever that is. Think about what issues are important to the people that ride the line. Does Metro North have enough cars available to support the ridership? When the cars are available, how reliable are they? How does that reliability impact the overall performance of the line? When the cars are available, are they comfortable and clean? Think about those things and maybe document the bulleted list. And then the challenge from Rich's side and my side is, how do we get our data streams to provide the information you're looking for?
I think the reports that we have now have been something that's been developed over time. Right? They weren't given to us this way, and then we just kept them, right? So over time, we've added quite a bit of information. We've taken away some other pieces of information. They're very helpful because they give a raw number that says, this is where things stand. This is how many, what the constant compliance was, or this is how many cars were in service, whatever it might be. And it allows you to look back over a period of time with the same metric and say, over the last couple of winters, what did things look like? Does it actually get better in the summer? As we've added the inmates, what's happened? And it allows us to then go back to the riders that talk to us and say, actually, I know you think that things are getting worse, but they're getting better. Constant compliance is up, not down. And these are the numbers. And I know we only measure them during the morning, and you're concerned about the afternoon, whatever it is, but at least it gives us the ability to go to them with something that people can't say, well, I sort of feel this way, or anecdotally it's this. These are the numbers.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. An example is cars out of service. What I suggest you change that report to is cars available. Looking over a period of time and seeing the available cars increasing is actually what the customer experiences. If you look at the reverse of that, cars out of service, at the same time you could be having a higher availability, this number might be showing that we have more cars out of service. So it's sending an inaccurate message.
Right, and I think there's two parts to that. Just one is when we had a static fleet, and we didn't have inmates coming in, the cars out of service was a huge measure of where things stood. Because the number of cars in service wasn't
Yes.
changed. The other for cars out of service, it allows us to measure on that monthly bite that we get, what the backlog is. Guys, all of a sudden you went from 50 cars out of service to 100 cars out of service. Did you have a shop plan in place where you decided to go through and do a maintenance program? Or was it the winter and all of a sudden we had snow coming in, and we weren't supposed to have snow coming in? So it allows us to look in and know something's out of whack. Because historically you've run a certain number and now that number's jumped, or doing a great job, now that number's falling. So I would keep both numbers, I think they're both very helpful. They give you different pieces of information. And the more numbers, the more that the cars out of service begins to rise, the more that it will begin to start nudging into impacting the cars available. But you do need both sides of the ledger for that.
Okay.
Okay, so, thanks, John. Were there, so we talked about a fair amount of issues. Were there any mainline issues that anyone wanted to discuss? Jeff?
Stanford Station, what's going on? Have you signed the contract for the
No, we
garage?
have not signed the contract.
Okay, so about 4 weeks ago or so, there was a hearing in this building for the full Board of Reps, at which point the folks from the potential builder that you might work with, the potential developer, presented what I thought was a pretty good plan. The public was not invited to comment, so there was an opportunity for anybody to really interact with them other than members of the Board of Reps that didn't have quite the history that those of us around the table on all sides have with this issue. It would be great if we could get a similar presentation from that group to have the opportunity to ask him. There's a lot of questions that have come up surrounding that. You know, the conversion of Station Place to a one-way street, for example, or what they're doing. You know, it looks like there's a lot fewer parking spots and traffic's been a zoo for quite a while. I know a couple of years ago we had folks in from CDOT and we actually stood in the garage as cars raced around us to try to kill us. And went right through stop signs and whatever else. And it was the first time I think that Gene and a couple of other folks experienced what those of us that are there every day experience. And the penny dropped and they began to appreciate it. It would be great if we could have that type of issue again. The other main point for that is people took away from that meeting that it's gonna take 3 years from when you sign the deal and they build the new parking garage, they start taking down the old one. There's a concern about the maintenance of the old one during that period of time. Rebar's coming up through the roadway, concrete's dropping from the ceiling. A lot of people won't park there anymore because they're concerned. What are you guys gonna do about maintenance for that 3-year period from when you sign until we're gonna close that aging facility?
I think I've reported in previous meetings, because I didn't sign a confidentiality, I wasn't part of the selection process, I was not privy to any of the information other than some very limited releases. I think I was asked, and I'll say it again if you guys, and I guess, it sounds again that you want a presentation. You know, I'll talk to Scott Hill's group, who oversees this, to see if we can get the developer to come in. I guess maybe towards the next meeting or.
Well, next meeting's in
Next
New York.
meeting's in New York, so maybe.
So in July.
Well, that's what
July.
I'm saying, so that, I mean, again, you know, so, again, we've all been anticipating, waiting for signature. I've been sealed away from my own staff on this issue, to be honest with you, because I can't talk to him, and I want to break that, because he signed a document, but they've been letting limited information out, like you had said. And, so I think then it would be the July meeting is what you guys are looking for?
July 16th.
So July 16th to have the presentation in Stanford.
Very nice.
Hopefully we'll have a signed contract.
Thank you, Rich.
With or without, but if
Yeah,
you
but-
give it to the Board of
so-
Reps, just give us the same presentation, so it's public information, it's when we put
Yeah,
it out
and
there.
actually, if you want to watch that presentation, it's on the internet.
Right, I just want to
Yeah,
give folks
you know what I'm
the
saying?
opportunity to
I
interact
know.
with the
I know.
developer and
Listen,
the
yeah.
public a chance.
There's some things I do, I just shake my head because I can't go to Craig and say, hey, Craig, give me some of the lowdown. But, like you said, there's been, because they've been, again, there's no signed deal yet. They're very close from what I'm hearing. But once it's signed, then obviously there's more discussion. But I think what you're trying to bring up is that there's things in the sequence of this project that are very critical as communication points. Again, and I take what you guys say about communicating and getting it out. What are we gonna possibly do? Because if we had to wait 3 years, there's gonna be, deterioration's gonna be much worse. And it's gonna lead to either people getting hurt, flat tires, whatever the issue is. So, you know, we gotta take that. So, but I have to really leave that to that group. But I'll take it from this and let them know that at the July 16th meeting, you'd like to have,
Great.
if I get the agenda earlier.
I'll do better. Hey, listen, Terry has some big shoes to fill, you know, it was hard for me to, Terry, go ahead.
Well, I think there's a couple things. This will lead into eventually the long-range planning committee, which I'm now chairing, but I think we need to understand that transit-oriented development is gonna play a big factor in Stamford. So the parking garage that's coming down, you're not gonna get a parking garage there, probably. It's gonna be more transit-oriented development, and things are gonna be moved. So the moving parts in this thing are tremendous. We've got a meeting tomorrow with Connecticut Fast Track. We've got Blueback Square, Ron Van Winkle, who's the chair or the town manager of West Hartford. We've got Matt Hart, who is the head of Mansfield, where they're building a new Connecticut, Main Street for UConn. There's a tremendous amount of things that are gonna happen here. There's a lot of moving parts that are beyond just the parking garage. So I understand why it's taking longer than you would think it would. But there's still a lot of political stuff going on about what's gonna happen there in terms of transit-oriented development versus parking close to the station. So those are things that can't be talked about because there's still development going on. But as we move into the long-range planning committee stuff, before we finish tonight, that's gonna be a major issue, that transit-oriented development. And frankly, commuters might not be as happy as they wanna be, but towns and, the cities and people that wanna live near those things might be a little happier. So we're gonna have to balance this stuff as we move forward.
Good job. I got something to respond to.
No, go ahead.
No, respond. No, because you're onto it. The department's putting positions into a transit-oriented division because it's something, believe it or not, of the future. This is not the only one that's happening in the state.
We've got 8 new positions, I believe.
Yes, and so, yesterday we had a briefing with the announcement of our new engineer that's heading up the design and construction division. Jim Rediker sat with the entire staff of Rails in Newington, sequestered to Newington to meet with the commissioner, and they wanted to know more about the vision of where Rails is going, as well as Jim talked a little bit about some of these new initiatives, and one of them is the TOD. And as I see it, because I'm involved with a few from outside of Stamford, there's more, things going on potentially in Old Saybrook. There's things going on in Meriden. There may be something in New Haven. I just got a call from Clinton. They called me and they were saying, if we do anything with the factory on the other side, we want to have, and I'm like, we're not touching it, but if a developer comes in with the money and is buying it, because that's some of the future potentials that people are looking at investing money, like the one I'm looking at and seeing going on in Old Saybrook. It's a housing a housing development with some, other retail going on. But right there on an 11-acre spot, we're going to put another 200 spaces for parking. But everything's starting to statewide. So I just wanted folks here to know there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on with brownfield remediation. Tim Sullivan, who is now DCCD, he's doing waterfront, he's doing TOD, and he's doing brownfield remediation. There's a ton of stuff going on. There's money that's been announced in the last 2 weeks for a lot of stuff to clean up and to move forward. So it's a moving part, but this all plays into it. We can't be in a vacuum here.
No.
We need to understand that it's all part of an integral movement to get intermodal transportation into the state and to make the state have a better economy.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
What I was going to mention is I'm going to have to leave, so I was
Okay.
wondering if there are any key Metro North issues you'd like to discuss?
So I think we've moved through everything. Brent, shoreline east issues?
Well, maybe what we could do is talk about, we're gonna be meeting next month in New York. Where's a good place to meet?
Can we meet in Grand Central itself rather than in the building adjacent to it? I'd love to get as many commuters as possible, even those that can't stay the whole meeting, but be able to come through. I know you guys have quite frequently in some of the larger waiting, what used to be the waiting areas.
Vanderbilt Hall.
Right, there's a way to set up seats or do something in there.
Yeah, the acoustics is terrible in Vanderbilt. That's one of the problems. I know the New York Commuter Council met the commuters. They didn't have a formal meeting, but they stationed themselves outside the station master's office last week. And they met the commuters and had conversations with the commuters. And they were able to do that, at least outside the SMO. But they didn't have a formal meeting. If you're gonna have a meeting like this where you wanna communicate with each other and invite commuters or customers, I think you're gonna have a hard time doing that. We'd have to look at the Vanderbilt Hall usage. and see if it's even available or if it's rented out. But I would say that, you know, for a meeting, we've had our own meetings there, Metro North meetings in there, and it's very difficult. The boardroom would be, I would recommend the
The boardroom would be
boardroom.
the place to have it, you know.
The problem is then you're not gonna get any drop-ins. And I figure,
Well, if you wanna meet the customers, maybe you would consider a different format for the meeting and do something like the New York Council did. I don't know, I'm just throwing it out
I
there.
think
We
we have to
gather
have a
around the
meeting.
bar area.
Bar carts? We can have as many bar carts as we want.
Actually,
Yeah, they would
once
If
you met,
Condot can give
Because-
us a beer subsidy, and we can hand out beers to the commuters.
Did they actually do?
Strawberry
Bar
daiquiris?
carts.
we once met on a car stationed on one of the platforms. So there was one of the old observation
Yeah,
cars or
inspection
meeting cars.
Yes.
And we did it in that, and people came in, walked in and out, and they knew that it was available. I'm not sure if you can type a platform all
Yeah.
day.
We could look into that.
Because at least that's in the location where people can come and go.
Okay.
What's the date?
18.
June 18th.
Oh, June 18th.
Last year, I think we met a little earlier than the 7 o'clock time, recognizing the distance, so we didn't settle a time for the,
Yeah, I think we did, I think we met earlier, what,
I
like
thought it was
6 o'clock or?
I thought it was 6.
If
Does
you
that
want
work for,
commuters, 6 o'clock is better than
does
7.
that work for everybody, 6?
And
Okay.
6 isn't too late either.
Do I get a free ticket?
None of us get
Yeah,
hands
someone
on.
else
ask John how he got his free ticket.
There you go. Okay, so real quick
It
for
was
John.
supposed to be mailed with your
Yeah.
appointment letter. If you didn't get it, talk to the governor's
I believe we
office.
could probably.
So I just wanna-
free ticket, we want to pass.
I just want to confirm, no main line, shoreline, branch line issues, we finished
Yeah,
up all the Metro North issues?
Yeah.
At 6 o'clock?
Thank you, gentlemen,
Okay, great, though. It's
Great.
always a
Thank you very
pleasure,
much.
believe it or not.
and ladies.
To hear
I
the
have one thing
feedback.
though before we leave. I just happened to notice, because you left the minutes here, that I'm listed as attending last month, but I was actually in the state of California.
Because you're like always here for us, you know?
I'm usually here for you.
It felt like you were there.
No, that's what I mean, you just felt like you were here.
Last month I was not.
Any other comments on the minutes?
Yeah, because we have this and then we're getting closer.
And,
Okay.
and what I do want to do, I'll take you off, Sue, but what I do want to do, last month's minutes became a real problem because I lost a thumb drive that had the info, and I had to type it for a second time, which I was not pleased with. Anyway, I do want to get these out earlier and also get them, not only the council members, but also DOT and Metro North, because we're just looking for factual corrections, and it is difficult at times. We're talking about some very technical things, and I don't necessarily get them right.
So is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Terry, second, Mitch?
No.
All in favor? Okay.
Can't
And,
vote on it.
okay, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah.
Mitch abstained.
And you got.
Just one thing, in the future, when you have the line,
Mitch and Jeff abstained, I apologize.
can you list
Thank you
out
for
some
having
of the issues?
Will do.
It just gives us, and it gives me a chance to, if I need to get any other information than I have available. So as you have like each of the lines, just put some bullets or letters of all the issues that you're aware of coming in. Obviously, something may change between the draft of the agenda and
Will
stuff.
do, Rich. So John, Richard kind of mentioned my subcommittee, the operations subcommittee. Terry, did you guys meet since our last meeting?
No, I'll be right back. I just gotta.
Oh.
The meeting's still going on.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, so one thing I'm gonna have to leave to catch 8:56. And one thing under old business, because I think the only thing we haven't done is the new business, and then the one subcommittee report, or two, is I did send a link out to the website. It's certainly a work in progress. John had many great ideas. I know Terry referenced the logo, which I might need a little help with. So if you get a chance to go through that and look at that and give me your input. Some of John's input was kind of a more interactive homepage, maybe a link to Council in the News or a link to some of the videos that we've talked about. Jeff mentioned a link to the video that he just talked about the Stanford parking garage.
Can we optimize it for mobile? Excuse me? Can we optimize it for mobile?
Okay, I'll take that suggestion.
Is it possible to get a running feed of their posts?
Get an alert when they post, when
Yeah,
they change
you
the
know,
okay.
that's just
There's a way to
running on
do
the
it. You can write a
side.
script that reviews it periodically. There's an HTML script you can run, but we'd have to have somebody actually do
Yeah,
that.
like
But
that,
they-
useless, yeah.
So Terry, we've had a few more suggestions on the website. By the way, I agree with your website about Metro North. I don't know if you had a chance to look at the website, the commuterrail.org. I sent it out.
I haven't looked into it.
Okay, but let me just say
but
this,
it's time.
if you can help, I am certainly not good enough to change that logo, I agree about the Metro North, I think we all do, but I just wasn't good enough to
Yeah, I
edit
think
that.
last time we paid someone to do it. We all took it in our
Okay.
pocket and that's
All
what
right.
We did. It was-
Jim
it was-
did it and we reimbursed him.
Okay, the website,
Terry had a,
What Terry had it and we reimbursed her,
Yeah.
whatever it was.
but I agree with you. So but if you have any input on the website or your phone number, contact information, I'd appreciate that. And then, Terry, we were just looking for subcommittee updates.
Okay, so we haven't had a meeting yet because we formed it last meeting and I wasn't here, but I wanna really understand what you guys are looking for. I know there is diversity of opinions on what we're supposed to be
I
doing.
do apologize, I have to head out. I do have to make the 8:56 train. I think all we have to do is adjourn and discuss this.
But really, and then, then I wanna meet with Leslie and John and Laura at our.
Night, everybody.
Good night, thank you very much.
Right, good job. Well, what
Yes.
do you really want us to do? I mean,
Well, I think if we take a look back at the legislation that created this new body, I think they're really looking at the expansion of the rail system. And so there's been some discussion, I know among the members on your committee, want to get into transit-oriented development, and that's fine. But the main focus should be the expansion of the rail. And I guess one example would be in West Haven, they built a new rail station, and then the town really hadn't done any rezoning or anything to take advantage of that new rail station. But again, that's something that's a responsibility of the town, not of Metro North. And so that's kind of an example of something where they had an opportunity, but the locality has to kind of take advantage of it and address its zoning.
and
Yeah,
at a higher
resource.
level, that's what, I was at Capital Region Council of Governments today, we were talking about that. But again, we had Tim Sullivan in there, who's doing, so for a lot of the rail committees, the waterfront development stuff, I think is gonna be critical. They're talking about the Port Authority. Bridgeport, New Haven, and New London is gonna have a Port Authority. Bridgeport, they're doing major development, which is right next to the rail. So all of that stuff has to play in, but I just wanna make sure, I know what,
I'm not so sure that TOD in and of itself is really the purview of the council. We're supposed to be looking at rail operations and the commuter, and be advocates for commuters. You don't have any yet, but you're going to. You can see the problems that exist on this line. So those sorts of things are gonna be happening on your line as well, when it comes up. So I would think that the major focus here, I would believe, would be on how you're gonna communicate with commuters that are gonna come in the future, how you're gonna work on problem solving at the local level, what sort of connectivity there's going to be for people, rather than transit-oriented development in general, which, by the way, they don't let us in on. I mean, we are a year and a half after they were supposed to have signed a contract to do this station. And for over 2 years, we've been completely frozen out of this process. And when they come to even talking about putting in 12 monitors in stations, for screens, oh yeah, well, they're thinking about it, but they're not telling us anything at all. So,
so when you say long-range planning committee, are you talking about New Haven to Springfield, or are you talking about the entire line, which would involve all of these other stations, and potentially having us giving feedback and getting involved in all aspects of that? I'm just
Sure.
trying to, if you wanna say it's New Haven to Springfield, fine, but the bottom line is, you guys got a lot of stuff going on the other corridor too.
I would say yes, absolutely. To the extent that we can, because if we look at the current operations, we have a lot of feedback about what is and isn't happening. But there should be more, we should be working with them more about what could be done in the future.
And also, do you define long range as 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Again, are you looking at just the newer areas? Are you looking at West Side access into Penn Station? Are you looking at bringing new potential workers into the Connecticut region from Long Island and from Queens? Are you looking at what's going to happen to Grand Central when Long Island Railroad kicks in and displaces some of our trains? So all of that kicks into what's going to happen to us over the long-term horizon. Because if you're looking at how the state's gonna work and how we as a council look across the whole state for commuter rail, we need to cover all of that.
We had, Mr. Austin was there too, we had a thing at the Lyceum in Hartford, and we got the plan, the long-term plan for rail, and it was 2040. Okay, that's the long term, and that's the inland route, you know, Boston to Springfield and everything else, and somehow they came up with a route of Providence to Hartford, which is ridiculous. But I mean, the planning cycle could be 2040. It could be the next couple of years. But I'm just trying to determine what we're gonna do that's gonna be meaningful. So I probably know more about that Stanford transit-oriented development stuff than most of you guys do already, because I'm involved in that. I'm involved in brownfield remediation. I'm involved in TOD. I'm tight with, you know, some of the people that are. So I just wanna do something meaningful. And long-term stuff, I'm not gonna be around. You know, I'm 65, I'm not gonna be here in 2040.
Can you propose a mission statement? Can you propose what it is you'd like to do as a committee that all of you are interested in, that meets the criteria set out, that allows us to look, you know, pick our heads up from the muck a little bit, really look around and say, anything we propose will take 5 or 10 years to put to place, and it's gonna last about 50. So this is how long it's gonna take. This is what we plan to do and what we plan to propose. And it's gonna take that long to do it, but come up with a mission statement about what you want to achieve.
So I would think, for example, that just talking again about these screens that they want to put in some stations on the New Haven line. We should be part of that. There should be a commuter voice helping to make that decision. And if you could get a foot in the door and get CONDOT to take you in as a partner on that, that would be huge.
Right, but I don't think that's a long-range planning committee, right? I think there's two separate things here. One is utilizing the skill set and the knowledge that we have on the council from all of our members to try and work with the people at CONDOT to achieve what we need, but that's an operations issue. That's making sure that they have the right number of screens, they have them in the right place. Unlike the last time, they don't put them in the rain. You know, we had a lot of problems with Stanford Station when they first put them in. But I'm not sure if that's the same things that we're looking to achieve over the next 40 years with a long-term group. And maybe what we need to do is create another committee that works on communication. There's 4 bullet points in their 100-day plan. The 4th one, and the one that everything else pivots around, is communicating. And maybe we need to mirror that.
Yeah, at one point, I mean, there was a discussion about having one of the subcommittees be operations. And that's kind of generated into, well, the entire council is going to do operations, but maybe we still could use a subcommittee that's really focused in on some of these things, so that, you know, instead of just meeting once a month on operations, you could have a subcommittee that is meeting in the middle of each month to kind of keep things going.
What was the committee that met at 6?
It didn't.
It didn't, but it was.
That was the
it
operations
was-
planning report task force?
And that's kind of an ad hoc committee. That's a committee that's just working on that operations report.
Okay.
But let me give you an example, because I mentioned it earlier. DOT, or Department of Transportation, bus and rail don't do that well together.
Right.
They don't communicate that well. Jim Rediker's doing a better job. There's no doubt in my mind about it. But a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about for months, in terms of improvements to communication, in terms of, you know, phone apps, in terms of signage, is being done on the rail, on the busway. We're gonna have that in place March of next year. There's a huge contract that's been awarded to do this. So the next logical step is, why wouldn't you do it with rail too? So to me, that's one of the big things, the transit-oriented development. Long range, maybe that's not a good word for it.
Yeah.
It's planning over the next few years of how we're gonna tie this stuff together. So I'll use Stanford as an example. Yeah, we moved the parking garage over here, but now we put all these amenities downtown for people that could be pretty cool for commuters and for everybody else. But we have to have that discussion. So I don't know how it fits into the long range. I don't think long range is, you know, the busway, the railway is coming. Busway is it's moved out to March of next year. Rail, they're talking about 2016. We're gonna have New Haven to Springfield. We're gonna have a lot more routes, and then they're building the second lane. So how does it all tie together? But yet, how does it tie into what you already have in terms of development and what can happen moving forward? And I think we need to be open-minded to the fact that the development piece of it is gonna be huge, because you'll get more people living near there. You won't need as many parking spaces. You'll get more usage. I'm a little scared about what they're saying about capacity. I'm very scared, actually, about what they're saying about the capacity is now. If we're trying to expand it and build all these centers and move through New Haven and Springfield, what they're saying to me is they don't have a lot of capacity now.
With PTC, they'll be able to run more trains on the same tracks we have today. That's what we've been hearing, right? But then they keep saying they can't afford it and they won't do it, and it'll be years before we have it. But that's the view. The other is you put more cars on existing trains. This is the first time I've heard that there's a problem with storage at Grand Central.
Yeah.
All the years I've been on the council, no one's ever mentioned that as a problem before. Makes sense,
Yeah.
but you know, you thought someone would have said something.
What's gonna happen to that problem when the Long Island trains start coming into Grand Central?
You'll have even less, well, they're gonna come to a third level, so in theory, it won't be impacted, but you don't know how much, we know they already lost part of the second level to get access to the third level. So we already lost some tracks. But even for TOD, we have 200,000 square feet of space coming in to replace the garage. We don't know how much is hotels, well, those guys will drive. How much is stores, people need to get there to come to work. How much is retail, not necessarily retail, like retail food and whatever else they want to have on the lower level, restaurants and stuff. And how much of that will be businesses, where the workers need to come back and forth. That'll be at higher levels, but office space. So the assumption that people won't drive, I don't think really holds. If you take a look at the number of spots and the lack of availability of parking really behind the garage and the new development that got put up, people are parked, they're double parked all over the streets every day.
Well, the two biggest, and again, I've been at 4 meetings today already. The biggest 70, 80 million is baby boomers, and the 7, 80 million is millennials. Those are our two largest populations. We met with the S group last week in a corridor advisory. The 21 to 31-year-old, they don't want cars, or they want very little cars. They want walkable communities. They want to be able to do this. They want to be able. I got 5 cars and 2 of us, so I'm like cringing at what they're saying. And then you want seniors that want it down. You know, they want to stay in their town, but they don't want to stay in the big house anymore. And they want to be closer to everything.
Which is
So
interesting, 'cause
demographics are changing.
Again, I think you.
But that's not the commuter
That's
council.
commuter council.
But it is part of it.
Of course, we don't work in a vacuum, we have to be aware of those pieces so we can anticipate the commuter and rising number of commuters and their needs. And I would imagine that, I mean, hopefully we'll meet before the next meeting, but it does seem like there's plenty of us, or plenty of things for us to take on.
Okay.
But with your knowledge of what's coming, I think it will certainly inform that conversation.
But I did want to talk to all of us, so we don't go off in some direction that is like.
Well, it's just a,
Yeah.
put together a mission
Yeah.
statement, but keep in mind that the Commuter Rail Council is about commuter rail.
Understood.
And, you know, and you certainly can be interacting with the Connecticut planners and other organizations that are working on other pieces of transit-oriented development.
Okay, I will get something out in the next couple of days to set up a meeting.
That's great.
We'll figure out a
Yeah.
local,
Yeah.
a medium place where we can get together, and we will do that. But I wanted to come here first to just
No,
not
that's
just
fine.
go off and,
Doing the right thing. Appreciate it.
cool.
Thanks, everybody.
All right,
Okay, so
somebody
we're
wanna,
adjourning at 8:55.
We are adjourned.
Second?
There we go.